Welcome to the Theresian Military Academy in Austria. I'm Colonel Markus Reisner, the head of the Research and Development Department of the Academy, and today we will have a look at cognitive warfare, the war in Ukraine and the hidden battle for our minds. First of all, let us look at the traditional domains of warfare. We have the land domain, the maritime domain, and of course the air domain. More and more important becomes the space domain. But interesting is that there are two domains which are more and more dominating the other ones. And this is the cyber domain, because it's more or less going through all the other ones, nearly in time. And of course, it's the information domain, the domain we all take part in. When we look at the type of warfare, then we can see that there is a transformation from the traditional mechanized warfare over informatized warfare in direction of intelligent warfare. What does it mean? It means that all the means we have when it comes to digitalization gives us the possibility to control more and more our minds by all the means and by controlling the information we consume. If you look in detail and have a look at certain terms like hybrid warfare, cognitive warfare, information warfare and cyber warfare, we can see that there is a mixture of certain things in the middle of these three circles, which defines the possibility to attack another opponent by doing influence operations. When we now look to the conflict in Ukraine, it's interesting to see that the beginning of the conflict was not only represented by all the things we have seen on the ground, so the tanks and the infantry fighting vehicles and the aircraft attacking, but also by a lot of other things which were hidden. For example, all the cyber attacks which were done prior to the start of the hostilities and afterwards. And it's interesting to see that especially the Russian side tried to actively influence the Ukrainian soldiers. How were they doing this? So let's have a look at the beginning, on the 24th of February. In the beginning, a lot of focus was on Kiev and the situation there. The air assault by the Russian troops on Kiev. But parallel to these developments, Russian drones were sending short messages to the Ukrainian soldiers in the east, telling them that the government and the military leadership has fallen. The Ukrainian side struggled for a while to give them the understanding that everything is fine and that they are still fighting against the Russian side. But this is a clear example of influence operations conducted by the Russian side. It's also interesting to see that the Russian side were able to conduct multi-domain operations. So that means cyber operations in connection with physical attacks by rockets, for example, as we can see here in several examples in March. Interesting is that in the enduring phase, means in the phase where we are at the moment, certain institutions like the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs or the Russian Ministry of Defense, but also the intelligence services like the GRU, the SVR and the FSB are actively trying to influence us. Those institutions are using different formats, media formats, to influence the Western world. To make sure that you understand that not everything what you can see on television is real, I would like to show you the following video. The video shows obviously killed Ukrainian soldiers, but when you look at the end of the video, you can see that these soldiers race and move away.
34. 35. Ну что, команда, подъем, просыпаемся. Ай, молодцы.
History shows that a war of attrition is not decided on the battlefield, but it's decided on the home front. So we have to understand that there is a fight against us. When I refer to us, then I mean the Western world. So let us talk once again in detail about the condition of the conflict for the moment. We have a war of attrition. So there is success from the Ukrainian side in Kherson and of course also in Kharkiv. But the question is if the decision of the conflict will be done really on the battlefield or maybe on the home front. What do I mean by saying that? It means that the Russian side tries to influence us on the home front by telling us stories like that because of the problem with grain, we will have a hunger or even mass migration situation. That because of the situation in Zaporozhye and of course maybe the use of tactical missiles, we will have nuclear catastrophe. And overall, there is the fear from the West that maybe there will be some kind of economic collapse in the near future because Russia will give us not the resources we need to go through the winter. And as we can see in the media, all these operations from the Russian side are fed with headlines. Like, for example, the critical gas supply to Europe. Or it's interesting to see that when Gazprom actually has stopped the gas flow through Nord Stream 1, immediately afterwards they released a video which we would like to show you, which shows the West what will happen to them because of the fact that the gas is not flowing to the West.
Зима будет большая, воду взгляни-ка за рекой, тихо осень умирает, машет желтою рукой снег.
The problem is, it looks like that the European people are not that kind of resilient like maybe the Russian ones. There was a poll in 2015 and there was the question asked, would you be willing to fight for your country? And you can see the will is very low in the Western European countries. It's different in the United States and of course it's different in China and even in Russia. And of course, as you can see here, because this was done in 2015, so after the attack of Russia and Ukraine in 2014, it's even higher in Ukraine. But this is the terrain which is used by the Russian side to attack us with these influence operations. So that means that maybe a situation like we have seen with the sinking of the Moskva, where we think it was a big success, leads to the point that the Russians are even getting more determined because they say now we are fighting against the West. But on the other side, our media is telling us that the situation is even worse than we think. And maybe without the surge and military aid, it will not be able, the Ukrainians will not be able to solve it. Or maybe we are not able to come up with all the weapons which the Ukrainians need because we are still, when it comes to weapons production, in a peace production. Or of course the question of sanctions, which obviously hurts us more than Russia. At least this is what Russia is trying to tell us. So the situation is, we have to ask ourselves if success, like we have seen during the attack on Crimea on the Saki airfield, which was very successful, or when it comes to the operations of the Ukrainian side in Kherson or even in Kharkiv, maybe lead to the point that Russia is escalating the situation, which we have seen in the last 2 days, because the Russians started to attack the critical infrastructure of the country to put pressure, of course, on the Western resistance to Ukraine. In this short video you can see the result of one of these attacks on a Ukrainian power station. So it's important to understand that Ukraine needs the assistance of the West to fight against Russia. It needs the weapons, like the ones we can see here, to fight against Russia. That's their center of gravity. So Russia is trying everything to reduce this center of gravity, to reduce the assistance of the West for Ukraine. The narratives the Ukrainians are using for this are very simple. First, Ukraine defends Europe against the Russian aggression, and Ukraine defends our Western values when fighting against the Russian. On the other side, let us have a look on the center of gravity of the Russian society. It's the cohesion of the Russian people and the fact that together they stand with the president. Their narratives are different than ours. They have the narrative, it's not Russia against Ukraine, no. It's the West, the US, NATO, Europe against us. We are fighting a war like our grandparents did. It's a great patriotic war 2.0. In the next video, you will see an example of this Russian propaganda and how the Russian people are working with it. So the risk is that maybe Ukraine is winning on the battlefield, like we have seen here in the offensive of Kharkiv, but the decision how this conflict will end is maybe not done in Ukraine itself, but it's done in our home countries, because it depends on the assistance of us to the Ukrainians. And we should not forget that not all over the world there is assistance for Ukraine, because a lot of parts of the world are still in a limbo and waiting what to do in the next months. So the question is, how should we proceed in this conflict? It's like a gamble. So there is a card game between the West and Russia. In this card game we have different cards. So there is the diplomatic card. There is the card of information, so we know what's going on behind the scenes. And of course it's the card of military and economy. The card game was started by the Russian side. The Russian side used a military card and attacked Ukraine. We were shocked. What did we do? We used our economic card by imposing sanctions on Russia. But it looks like these sanctions need time to really lead to an effect on the Russian side. Meanwhile, the Russians are using their economic card, because what they are doing is they're trying to threat us that they are reducing more and more the resources we have from them. So the situation is like that we still know that there is a lot more to come. And as it is written here, very likely there is a tense pressure on the European society. And as we can see here in Czech Republic and in Germany, there are already some protests which are asking for a reduction of the assistance for Ukraine. And it looks like that maybe we have to come up with hard decisions. And again, I have to stress, from the Ukrainian side, at the moment, their need of weapons is still high. But maybe the decision when it comes to the conflict will be decided in our home countries when it comes to the question, should we go on to assist Ukraine or not? So if you conclude that the war in Ukraine is fought on several levels, the one level which is the tactical operational level on the battlefield in Ukraine, but the other level, which is the strategic one, that means the fight Russia against Ukraine, but especially the assistance of the West to Ukraine, we can summarize that it's still not over yet, and that the next weeks and months to come, especially the winter time, will be decisive for Ukraine. That concludes our brief for today, and I would like to say thank you and all the best. As an aside, I would like to say a very special thank you for my special fans. There are even some of them who think that I'm a Russian agent. It would be interesting to define what organization I'm working for. Is it the GRU, the SVR or the FSB, or is it the Minister of Foreign Affairs or even the Minister of Defense? I also would like to say thank you for all the ones who are sending me spam emails, over 80 a week, from young ladies who want to get in contact with me. Unfortunately, I cannot answer them. That concludes my brief, and I say thank you very much for listening to us.